Good morning. So we'll start on the session with our first two presenters who are from the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I will ask them to present themselves. And they make a presentation. I will try to take questions in between so that it remains interactive.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sarthak Roy, and good morning to everyone present online as well. And on behalf of Mukhtar, who is my colleague from the Commonwealth Secretariat, and I'm Sarthak, we want to also thank the National Youth Agency for also letting us present here, and also the Commonwealth Secretariat, although we represent ourselves in our personal capacity, because both of us have an international law background and we wanted to explore that dimension in the whole agenda and the topic that is at hand, which is relating to youth. So before I start, I just wanted to, for all those present here, so I just wanted to declutter the whole idea of international law from what it was to what it is right now. International law traditionally has been seen as a domain for interactions between states. It was seen to be a horizontal domain of interaction only between states. But post World War and most recently in the aftermath of the Cold War and after in the recent few years, we have seen that the domain of international law has reached and included a lot of different actors. We have seen corporate entities being present and working within the spectrum of international law. We have seen individuals present, like, for example, people who are disabled, their rights are being protected. And in so many ways, international law has touched the regular lives of so many people. And yet, our presentation is going to address one lacune that is present. That is, in the international lawmaking process, the role of youth is always almost left on the margins. And that is something we want to address through our presentation in the course of the next 40 minutes. So we title our presentation as the indispensability of youth in international lawmaking, from protection to participation. And just to clarify to everyone, most of what international law documents we have, like, for example, the Child Rights Convention, the Rome Statute to the International Criminal Court, tends to only provide protection mechanisms for children, whereas their participation is often underlooked. And as this conference has underscored, that the youth needs to be in the workforces in every domain, including in international lawmaking processes. And therefore, as Victor Hugo said, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has really come. And the time has come for youth participation in the international lawmaking processes. So this is how we're going to break down the whole presentation. First, we will showcase as to how international, multilateral agencies or UN agencies have treated the whole idea of youth in the domain of international lawmaking processes. So we'll touch upon a few UN resolutions, landmark UN resolutions, some multilateral agreements, and also focus on the several activism and campaigns which have moved international law forward towards accountability, justice, climate change, and several other areas which have been championed by youth that we have. Then my colleague Mukhtar will be presenting on how this turn to international law can really facilitate the whole legitimacy in international lawmaking processes. Many a times it is questioned that international law is not truly law because it does not really include the voices of many people. This is what we actually want to address and showcase the universalist values that international law upholds, and it can uphold further by the inclusion of youth through the three forms that we have presented. First, by addressing the legitimacy crisis in international governance due to the lack of presence of youth in lawmaking processes, which leads to intergenerational and intragenerational issues between youth and the voices that go forward. Then we showcase as to the most crucial part of our presentation, that it is time that not just protection, but also participation of youth in international lawmaking processes can be underscored. And finally, just like any other domain, theoretical domain, we also take a look at the intersectional approaches, which might be inclusive of youth being present in the international lawmaking processes as well. And finally, obviously, we touch upon the Commonwealth Year of the Youth. And as young professionals ourselves, we will also narrate from our personal stories as to how we have benefited in being part of this process of international lawmaking. Right. So now, firstly, the first time the mention of youth had actually come through in 1965 in the landmark UN General Assembly resolution called the Ideals of Peace, Mutual Respect, and Understanding, which had six principles or to educate youth persons in order to save them from the succeeding generations being involved in warfare or any of those kind. But there was a criticism that that resolution looked at youth only from a very homogeneous perspective, as if they only needed protection and never really considered their participation in various domains of life. Then another landmark resolution from the UN General Assembly came through in 1981, which for the first time promoted the idea of having youth delegates as part of official delegations to the United Nations or any other multilateral agencies. So this was, moving of the needle which happened in the UN General Assembly. And then in 1995, the famous World Program of Action for the Youth also was very landmark in the nature that it finally spoke about the issues of livelihood of youth around the world. And it finally spoke about youth from a heterogeneous perspective. And it looked at youth being affected across different spectrum from due to poverty, due to economic status, due to cultural issues. So it looked at the larger aspect of youth problems and issues and how they can be encouraged to be part of regular day-to-day affairs of international processes. So these were the three very landmark General Assembly resolutions. And then the Security Council has also dealt with the aspect of youth in three very important resolutions, although very late it finally started discussing. First was Resolution 2250, which focused on youth participation and secondarily on protection. And as you can see on the PowerPoint presentation, although the aspect of participation was mentioned, most of the pointers of that resolution focused on the protection of youth in different ways and forms of life, including in armed conflict or even during times of peace. Whereas the participation was unfortunately just a lip service which was present in this resolution. Then we move on to the second resolution in 2018, which focused on the role of youth leaders being represented at various armed conflict related resolution making processes. That's something which this resolution in 2018 did. And finally, the resolution of 2535, which came during COVID, just by the way, also addressed the issue of youth participation in transitional justice processes after an armed conflict situation. Because we see that this resolution we see that in this resolution it was noted as to how youth is largely affected during times of armed conflict, whereas their voices are not really heard in the processes after that for the future generations of the society to be held together. So that's what this resolution also highlighted, that there is a need for youth participation in transitional justice processes, which is not really seen much. And apart from that, the United Nations Human Rights Council has this system called the UN Special Procedures. As many of you would have heard, that there are special rapporteurs, there are working groups. Many of these working groups have focused on the rights of children and across from different domains, even from a special rapporteur on freedom of religion and belief has looked at various aspects of children's belief and religion issues. A special rapporteur on women's rights has also looked at girl child and their issues. So there is a lot of discussions, and yet again, though, it is only being relegated to the domain of their protection and their upliftment, but not really their participation, which is the reason why we are here presenting, making our presentation. Yes, now apart from the different several UN resolutions that I have underscored above previously, and also the UN special work of UN special rapporteurs, I want to also showcase as to how youth has been mentioned in different multilateral agreements. And unlike the list of the agreements that you see, it is only in the UN Convention on Rights of Child, Article 2, Article 12, which actually talks about emancipation of youth in the workforce and promoting youth in different domains of life. Even for that matter, the Rio Declaration of 1992 had also touched upon the aspect of youth in environmentalism and even climate change aspects, which, by the way, which makes a perfect segue for me to go to my third slide, which is on youth activism and campaigns. Now, this is a spectrum, this is a sphere where youth has been prominently being seen. Like, for example, environmental protection. Right now, we see that the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, is dealing with an advisory opinion on climate change. And how did that happen? That happened in a small school in Solomon Islands and in Vanuatu during the time of COVID. They were attending an international environment law class, and these kids, I mean, these were law students who thought that why can't we approach the ICJ to seek an advisory opinion on climate change? And that's what the Pacific Climate Change Action Group and the campaigning started. So much so, the representatives at the ICJ is being led by a youth-led law firm called Blue Ocean Law, which is based in Fiji and also has offices in Netherlands. So it is seen that this has been a landmark situation where youth have completely led it. And obviously they were supported by diplomats and other countries in a common cause which has affected the people. So that shows the vision and the passion that people have, the youth groups have in terms of promoting international law. And equally, we have seen in another aspect of environment law, for example, when Greta Thunberg was famous, obviously, for Fridays for Future strike. But not many might know that 12 other child activists, pursuant to the UN Child Rights Convention, had filed a case before the Child Rights Committee on issues pertaining to climate change and its effect on youth. And that committee had also come out with a wonderful opinion, which I'm not going to go into, but it also spoke about the need for the participation for youth in promoting environmental justice and preventing climate change. Now, in terms of human rights issues, right? So we have seen the Black Lives Matter movement, which was very prominent. And who were the faces over there? It was the youth groups which was present. My friend Mukhtar comes from Nigeria, and over there we know the very infamous situation of police brutality and the whole NSARS movement that happened. Where did that stem from? That came from youth groups coming through and promoting human rights, promoting accountability to those in power. And so that way also we have seen that youth have affected several civil and political rights issues, and also several economic, social, and cultural rights across the world. Now, in my final slide, before I hand over to my colleague, as to now we question as to, is it the era for turn to youth in international law? Well, 40% of the Commonwealth's population is our youth groups. By 2030, when the Sustainable Development Goals reaches its landmark era, there'll be 1.3 billion people around the world who would be youth. Isn't this the time, is what we question? Or should youth be left at the margins? Or should they be put into the mainstream in terms of international lawmaking processes? And there are several policy proposals that we promote over here, which would, I'm sure, would benefit many stakeholders involved in promoting better acceptance of youth in the international lawmaking processes. Thank you very much.
Can we take one or two questions before Mukhtar takes over? Do you have any questions on this first part?
Well, I'll ask a question. How can we make sure that the youth actually have a voice? Because I think for most people, they feel sort of disenfranchised. And you have pointed out that there are ways in which you can influence.
Right.
What are the best ways, or what are the best ways that you found in doing this research that you can really make a change?
Right. So I'm not going to take much of Mukhtar's contents, because this is what exactly he's going to address. But the main thing that we are also promoting, which we'll find here, is an idea of UN Youth Assembly, which will be a permanent assembly, which will be a permanent unit, which will work alongside the UN General Assembly for that matter. Just the same way the Human Rights Council reports to the UN General Assembly, we propose this idea of a permanent Youth General Assembly, where those discussions, which can concurrently go on, and then ultimately be reported to the UN General Assembly. That is at a larger scale, and rest, I'm sure, Mukhtar will be addressing on the minute aspects as to how youth can be promoted in international lawmaking processes.
Thank you very much for very interesting presentation. So, Jatma from Sri Lanka, and last year now we are celebrating exactly 1 year. The youth, they engaged heavily, and they were able to overthrow the even executive president, very powerful president, right? But the immediate after that, many youth were in prison, right? So the aftermath of that event, now the young people they were more affected. Right now they are unable to go to street without permission. Right? Previously, you see, all were able to go and you see they did a marvelous engagement. But with that,
Right.
now the from where they can get, I think this is very important. It's a comment actually. There is no protection, real protection for young people, those who are, you see, engaging with civil, political, and other rights, economic rights.
Right. So in this regard, as I mentioned, for example, I'll just give an example from Nigeria itself, from my friend's home country. So the whole police brutality mostly was affecting the youth groups, young boys who were being pulled aside and probably killed or even threatened. So ultimately, just like any form of outcry that happened, they hit the streets in a very peaceful manner, and they let the voices come through. Obviously, we understand, working within this domain, that it cannot be a completely black and white situation. But to a certain extent, their voices were heard, and there were several battalion units probably which was being pulled up by the powers that be. And people came to the notice of the leaders that the youth is present and is active and is ready to stand up for what their rights are. So I think obviously it is sad that this has happened, but equally, I mean, I work with Sri Lanka myself, and I've seen, like, for the Commonwealth, they wrote essays on the importance of youth within the Commonwealth spectrum. So there is hope, obviously, but this is just like a message to the leaders that it's time for them to also listen to the youth and promote them.
So we may come back to the case of Sri Lanka. Dr. Abesinghe works at the Open University of Sri Lanka, but he's also an activist, if I may say, and he's a member of the Sri Lanka Youth Workers Association. So he has several hats, and it is quite a poignant issue happening in Sri Lanka, especially for the youth workers and universities. So Mukhtar, over to you. Kevin, I can't, but maybe in the chat we can invite those online as well to have, if they have questions or remarks, put it in the chat.
Right.
Okay. Over to you.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking you for attending in person and those online to listen to allegedly boring lawyers speak. I'm sure SATAC has done well to disprove that myth. It's an interesting niche, and it's critical to the work that has been done at this conference today or over the last couple of days. This section can be interactive. You can stop me at any point to disprove, question, or even postulate new ideas as I speak. So feel free at any point to interject or interrupt my speech or whatever nomenclature you might give to it. My name is Mukhtar. I work with the Governance and Peace Directorate of the Commonwealth Secretariat. And like my brother said, a young professional. I'm passionate about this field. And thankfully, SATAC has done a very wonderful work on giving a foundational structure upon which I would build on and proffer practical solutions, practical experiences, so that we can stop talking and start doing. I think one of the best things I can do to you to stop listening to boring lawyers like us is that proffer solutions so that we can now, at the next conference, let us start taking stock. What can we improve upon? Enough of it talking. Let's start making the impact we deem fit in today's world. So let me start by giving the foundation, the fulcrum upon which I'll give my presentation today. It's the start on youths. 40% of the world's population, youths. 60% of the 2.5 billion people in the Commonwealth, youth. Indispensability. That's the core word. You cannot make a decision for 60% of people. 40% of people cannot make a decision for 60% of people. In no facet of society has that been done. Why is that being done to youth? I think it's time for introspection. And that's where our presentation comes in. And that's why we are saying 40%, 60%, the youths do have a voice, a critical voice at that. Let us move from being on the sidelines. Let us move from being afterthoughts. Let's move from being on the margins to taking active participation, decisions on the future, on our future, because at the end of the day, the next 30, 40 years, give it, like it or not, it's myself, people like myself, and other young professionals who are doing the critical work that will make impactful work on in the next 20, 30, 40 years. So it's the decisions we make now that would lay foundation for that. And I think this forms the foundation upon which I will be speaking today. Now, the first thing is questioning the adult policy setting process. And like the gentleman from Sri Lanka has pointed out, the issues are in the room of decision makers. Why youth would be marginalized and imprisoned and clamped down is because there are no voices in the room. I mean, you cannot play Hamlet without the king. You have to be there. If the youths are not there, then no decision on you to be taken, or decisions which are very paperweight and just for optics will be taken on the youth. But if the youth are present in the room, then of course these issues, it's a more of a proactive response rather than a reactive response to issues. And that is what we are postulating. If we're in the room from the inception, then we move from protection to participation and then implementation. And so mainstreaming, youth mainstreaming, and this would provide the perfect segue to the boring picture at the background. I'll come back to that. But youth mainstreaming is putting the youth at the forefront, letting the youth practicalize what we speak. And like I said, one of the core messages I want to leave with today is, let us take stock. Let us stop talking. At the next Commonwealth Youth Conference, Youth Workers Conference, let us be taking stock from what we have proffered today and seeing how we can better implement the suggestions we have made, rather than regenerating ideas and speaking without going nowhere. I think that is the aim and objective of this conference, and that will leave a lasting impact on the objectives and the results that emanate from this conference. Fostering intergenerational justice and a youth assembly, like Satak had briefly mentioned, the youth assembly is a core niche of what we are proposing. And so to be on the forefront, to be on the key parts of this international lawmaking, international politics making, international decision making, we need to ensure that a permanent mechanism is in place to ensure that there is a youth assembly where the voices of the youth constitute a vital part of what the UNGA does. The UNGA takes place every year in September in New York, and there is one coming up in the next couple of months. What is the role of the youths in these conferences? Is it a meet and greet? Are the decisions to be made, would it affect youth or not? I mean, it's time for decision making. It's time for real action. And we feel that the youth assembly will be a key step to ensuring that youth voices are heard, and it's not afterthought or an affirmative action, but a critical part of whatever communicate decisions are being taken at the youth assembly. And so I come to this picture. That is the DG of the WHO. That is the Commonwealth Secretary General. And someone at the your extreme left, may or may not be me. But the point I'm trying to make is, there is a generational, there's an age gap. But because I was there at that meeting, I was able to provide contextual and nuanced knowledge on issues that border our youth. You're talking about the impact of COVID on mental health and the health of young people. I mean, almost everybody here, there's a generational gap between, except the young lady on the right. But because I was there, thankfully, I was able to impute key parts of the discussions for somewhere in the Caribbean. And fortuitously, I was at this meeting. But what would have happened, which is the norm, which is unfortunately the norm, is some things that affect the youth. I was a youth living in COVID times. I will give you a practical example of what I went through. You don't know it. You may not know, you will not know it. I would give you because I experienced it. Now that's the difference of having me in such a meeting. And that's the difference of having youths in these discussions going forward. And so at the perfect segue to that may or may not be SATAC as well, debating on human rights and human rights with COVID-19 pandemic, with restrictions and limiting the movement of people during COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, the legal structure needs to be there for whatever we want to do. Now we're looking at the COVID-19 lockdown 2-3 years ago. The vibrant youth want to be outside. They want to maximize their youth, right? They want to party, we want to have fun with our friends. We want to interact, we want to travel. But you're saying due to a pandemic, for the overall health of the general populace, and for the to curtail the spread of COVID-19, you need to stay at home. Of course, youths are restless. It goes without saying, yeah? And now SATAC was able to debate on the legal structure upon which those actions or decisions can be taken. I mean, 40% can make a decision for 60 people. 40% definitely can make a decision for 60% of vibrant people. That's the difference we're talking about. And so we need a well-developed system of international protection of children and youth with legal certainty and legal structure, with youth participation and youth involvement, because we live the lives. We live the lives, and we can tell you where the shoe hurts. I'll go to some of the issues that are being faced currently, and you see limited possibilities for participation in international affairs. I mean, if I go back to this picture, if I was in here, there's limited participation already. But thankfully, I was pulled in and I was able to participate. But in the event that I cover myself, I'm not there, just look at the key actors, important people, important decisions will be made. But how would they affect the youth? Would it be practical solutions for the youth? I mean, that's the questions I leave with today. And so decisions in international politics, of course, and lawmaking are predominantly based on expertise, and the youths are not carried along. Specific perspective on those most affected by the decisions are often adequately not reflected. I've given an example. I don't want to belabor you. Like I've said, there's a challenge on me not to make this session as boring as possible. And it's like, oh, you're trying to give, law is always boring. And the lady stepped out and like, I'm going to take that up with you. I'm going to make this as interesting as possible. So I don't want to belabor you with law, with section. No, that's for the courtrooms. But this is important discussions. This is important conversations we're having. And the relatability of it is important to understanding what we're trying to say and the actions we're trying to achieve. And such, those who are often impacted are not carried along in these decisions. Democratic gains like NSAS and Black Lives Matter. I lived NSAS. The events of October 2020, where there was clamped down protesters, happened less than 500 meters away from me. I was at the protest ground. And so you cannot make decisions on lives of the youth without listening to those who live those lives. And that is why participation must not be discounted as the likes of Greta Thunberg, Black Lives Matter movement, and those who do work who are not even in the mainstream media. I mean, there's so much going on. I was in the Caribbean recently, and a lot of people are doing good work, doing great work. And these are the people who actually put their hands in the dirt and actually achieve stuff. It's youth work at the end of the day. Are we trying to achieve the economic growth of youth? These are the people putting their hands to the work in ensuring that youth lives are better. And as such, it might not make mainstream media, but this is my own way of celebrating those good people who do good work. And so I move forward to intersectionality, ensuring race, ethnicity, gender identity, class, language, yada, yada, yada. I promise I'll not be boring. So I'm not going to go into that. And so we need to develop a new way of thinking, a new way of doing things. Like I said, I want the next conference to be stock taking and no longer discussions. Let me save you the boring speeches. And so let's try to develop a new way to look at international law from a unique perspective, ingenious perspective. If it's the same old, you cannot put an old one in a new bottle like it was said at the opening plenary. It's still the same thing. Maybe a fancier bottle, but it's the same quality. And as such, we need new ingenious ways, and that is what we are preferring. Then unpacking the disproportionate influence of the older and exclusion of the younger generations in lawmaking, trying to make young people be an afterthought. I mean, we have gone past that stage, and we need practical steps in ensuring their inclusion in these steps. Also, international legal scholarship must aim to explain how such a law is made, implemented, and developed by ordinary people. One of the key parts of lawmaking, I must say, is it must be universal. There must be interaction with any and everybody and every person, irrespective of how old you are, irrespective of where you come from, irrespective of what you do. It's called now I forget it. I said I don't want to make it a legal presentation, but there's a legal term for it, trying to make sure that everybody is involved in the legal making process. And that is what we are saying. Why should a 10-year-old's perspective be different when you're making law for a 10-year-old? They live the life. And that's what we are trying to profile here today. Now we come to Commonwealth Year of the Youth. As we know, the year 2023 is the Commonwealth Year of the Youth. And the Secretary General has tried to live this a mantra when she says young people are the heart of the Commonwealth Charter. Despite the many challenges they face, young people give so much towards every aspect of the social, economic, political, and cultural life of our 56 member countries. Now, taking into cognizance this fact, the Commonwealth has tried to engage in a youth program to ensure that youth participation, we actually walk the talk as against just walking. Now, like I said, the fulcrum of my foundation, of my presentation is the fact that 60% of the Commonwealth are youth. 6% of 56 member states are the youth. Now, how do we engage and recognize young people? The Commonwealth has a Commonwealth Youth Index, which measures certain parameters upon which to ascertain and assess the growth and development of youth across the globe. So you have parameters like education. How well are the youth educated to be able to contribute immensely or critically to these sectors that I'm speaking about today? Health and well-being, mental health. We've spoken about the impact of COVID-19 on mental health, impact of lockdown on mental health, impact of technology on mental health. What are the metrics? What are the steps taken by member states in ensuring that these areas are well and carefully looked after to ensure the overall and holistic growth and development of youth in the country? Employment and opportunity. Youth employment is at an all-time high. What are member states doing to ensure that the chasm between employment and unemployment is bridged before the year 2030? Civic participation, we've talked about civil rights movements, we talk about youth activists. How are they protected? How are they being brought into the fray to ensure that they are parts of decision making in every country? And last but not least, political participation. Are youth part of the electoral system? Are they being elected? Can they afford to run for office? These are critical questions we need to ask ourselves as we go forward. And that's why the Youth Development Index is key to ensuring that what we're preferring today, it forms the basis, it forms the substratum upon which we can build upon some of the things we're trying to achieve over the next couple of years. And obviously, the Youth Ministers meeting, Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting taking place in September in London. What are the communiques going to reflect? Are they going to reflect youth-centric work? Are they going to reflect youth work? Are they going to reflect the work we do? Or is it just another chit-chat? And that's the call we are making to government, civil society, decision makers to ensure that these meetings reflect the good work that people do to advance youth in today's world. And as such, the Year of the Youth, also the Young Professionals Program, which I'm a beneficiary of and which other people have been beneficiary of. And if I can also make a reference to the WTO Director General, she started as a young professional at the World Bank, and today she's the Director General of the WTO. And so these are ways we can use to harness and actually take steps to ensure that youths are brought in early, gain the requisite experience to be able to contribute immensely to the world that we live in today. And let me conclude by saying the time is now, like Sataka said. Time is now. If we go around in circles, we're doing ourselves a disservice. We're kicking the can down the road. The problems are still there. But we can take critical, important, pivotal steps at this point to ensure that we start making the right decisions, not just for today, but for tomorrow. And so the first step is acknowledgements. We need to recognize the indispensability. Introspection. Are we doing the right things in bringing youths into the fray? Are we taking the right steps? Or is it just a communique, just for the sake of communiques? Are we practicalizing what we suggest? Active participation. What are the steps being taken? Are youths being brought in just to give credence to a forum? Or are their perspective of immense value to that forum? I think those are the questions that we leave with today. And so we suggest and propose active participation as against protection. Protect, develop the laws that protect them, but also develop the laws that ensure that they do participate actively in this sphere. And as such, from protection to front lines, protections to getting your hands dirty, international politics, international legal affairs. It's critical work. And you cannot make laws for people who are not part of the lawmaking process. It is not autochthonous. It's not ingenious. And I think now it's time for action. And that's what I leave with today. Thank you for listening.
Do you have any questions? I think we can take some time for questions because we were to have two other speakers from Dorset, but I think there have been some problems with the train as well. And usually they're not around. So we'll take a bit more time. They're coming?
Dorset?
Dorset. Oh, sorry, I was interviewing them on the couch.
Are you ready for it?
Right.
Hello.
Can we take a question?
Thank
and,
you.
once we settle. Yes, go ahead.
Gentlemen, thank you. Insightful, exciting, interesting. All you guys are talking about, obviously resonates with the audience here because we are all for the youth. There are a number of points for me really, and there might be a question also in there, or it's just my own brain working in mysterious ways that I understand. So hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. So we obviously talk about youth work, and exciting, fantastic conversation here and the year of the youth. There's also for me, I think, a part that needs to include children, because those children will become young people and obviously become adults, etc. So what is that transition? What's that voice for those children as they go in? Because their issues are not quite the same as those that are for youth, if you like. Another point for me is about accessibility for young people. We know, so I live here, I live in UK. So speaking from a UK perspective, we have communities that are difficult to engage and reach. Maybe you guys will talk a bit more about that are difficult to engage. There's so many phrases used around these, whether you call them marginalized or difficult to reach or whatever, but they're those communities. So therefore, how do we ensure that the voices of and representation of those young people is embedded in the conversations, in the engagement, like you guys are on those strategic positions and boards? Make sure that the person that is engaged in that can either afford to, if you are living near the coast, if you're from a coastal region, how do you are likely to be unemployed, you are likely to have low qualifications, you are likely to be in area of deprivation. How do we ensure that those people who are living in those areas have got the skills and ability and willingness to be able to engage, and their voices are heard in that? I say that because only in the last couple of weeks in this country, we had a young MP in the early 20s who became a member of parliament and has decided to resign that post because they found the House of Commons, where the members of parliament meet, a very difficult place to engage with because of the age group, because of the behaviors in there, because of the affordability side, in which you absolutely mentioned about as well. So there's that level of engagement we need to make sure is there for those young people. And I'm sure that'll probably be, I'm guessing it's probably the same in any community, in any country of the world. And the final piece for me is about one of your slides, CIP, I think, mentioned with multiple things on there. It was employment and opportunity. It's that slide, yeah. So one of the paper ones talks about employment opportunity, and I'm wondering whether we need to consider explicitly talking about enterprise, because there will be many people who started off either their social enterprise or young people who are entrepreneurs, because that's a form of employment in some way or / opportunity, and the volunteering is part of that whole youth development. That is a little bit of informal learning, perhaps, to be included in that. So I know you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements on there, but if we're not explicit about enterprise, we are always saying that you've got to have a job and work for somebody. But for a lot of people in this country, 97% of businesses are small. So they're under 250 employees. A lot of businesses are micro businesses in the region, which means they've got less than 10 employees in them. Social enterprises, particularly, are probably one-man bands or one-man bands, or whatever you want to call it. And then they expand to something else. So how do we make sure that we're also recognizing entrepreneurship as part of that development? I did say,
Yeah.
I'll blabber on.
Let me take this last question,
Okay.
because I'm from the education and youth section of the Commonwealth Secretariat. And well, this is just like a snapshot of what the Commonwealth Youth Program does. And it does include entrepreneurship skills, including training for young people and youth leaders on entrepreneurship skills. So it's totally integrated, including the non-formal sector as well, and how that can lead from the transition from school to work and employability. So it's very much, and we've done training in a few countries as well for young people on developing their employment. Hopefully we'll do more work, but so I will leave it for the first part. But
Okay. I think those are very interesting points, and it sparks conversation. And I think that forms like a core part of what we're talking about. And thank you for answering the part on entrepreneurship. I think employment and opportunities, employment doesn't necessarily mean formal work for somebody. Entrepreneurship remains a very core part of the Youth Development Index, and we cannot neglect that. As a matter of fact, I think it forms the basis upon which more youth get into the workforce or in working environments than employment, formal employment, so to speak. So thank you for that. Now, talking about the marginalized communities and people whose voice would not readily be heard, getting into those rooms, I think that is where myself and Satak come in. We can give you practical examples. We try to set the examples that if we can do it, you can do it. It's not easy getting to this point we've gotten. Sacrifices to be made, the challenges you face along the way. I'm from Nigeria, he's from India. And so, yes, it's possible. Might be daunting, but it's possible. And that's where we come in. That's why we are speaking at forums like this, to ensure that we speak for people like that and ensure that those people are brought into the fray. I'm saying now that youth are trying to get a foot in the door. And so voices like that, like marginalized groups, would be heard ultimately. But if you don't even get your foot in the door, if you don't get in the room in the first place, those voices will never be heard. And as such, that's where myself and Satak were trying to ensure, and also the youth theme of the ComSec, to ensure that by the time you get youth in the room, marginalized voice and people from the cause, underserved communities, they're already at a disadvantage. But who would do their biddings in conversations like this? It's the youths. And that's why we are trying to say, yes, let's get in the room and ensure that we can speak for those whose voices are not readily heard. So I think that answers.
I'll just add on to what Mukhtar mentioned in your first question on how children's voices can be understood, which is different from like an adolescent's voice. I had given an example, like the UN Child Rights Convention also allows for children to file petitions, which was done by Greta Thunberg and 12 other child activists to answer questions before, like they can propose questions to the Child Rights Committee and state that, children are being affected in these many different ways. So these international norms are existing. Our point is, how do we implement them so that we can see the rise of Ubuntu, the African proverb for oneness in humanity? That is what we want to see. We say that the tools are existing there. Now it is time to implement them. And in that process, the intermediary can be youth, can be children for that matter. And that is the proposal that, both of us have come up with.
So I think we can give them a big applause, and we will move. We will move to the next presenters who will be speaking about children.
And girls, yes. Sarah and Rachel.
Yes.
As you take your seat, I'll just add that the Commonwealth Youth Programme has a number of youth networks that they support. Be it, we have the Commonwealth Youth Council, the Commonwealth Students Association, we have groups on climate change, some of them you can share as well. But Sartak and Mukhtar, if you have key recommendations you want to make, please give them to the ABCA so that these can be transmitted from this forum to the Commonwealth Youth Ministers taking place in September, and hopefully then to the Commonwealth heads of government. So may I ask you to briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, we'll go on to our slide. We've got a slide that says introductions. We can start there. Morning, everybody. Is it still morning? It is. So yeah, we are pleased to thank you for coming to our session about Chesil Hidden Girls. So I'm Rachel Janaway. I'm a targeted youth worker in Dorset, Dorset Council, and I'm working the Chesil locality, which is our name for Weymouth and Portland. I'm also the contextual safeguarding lead for that area. Just give you a quick bit of background. So I never intended on being a youth worker. I graduated from uni, did an English degree, graduated in 2005, moved back home, and then thought, I'll probably just be a teacher, shall I? And applied for a part-time youth worker job as a sort of a basis to say, that will help my CV and getting a teaching job. By 2008, I was doing my master's in youth work, and then pretty much I've been working with young people ever since. So between 2005 and 2016, Dorset had a youth and community service, universal provision, targeted provision, and I worked within that until multiple restructures in local authorities, as people may understand, sort of led me to where I am today. But we're thankful to have an element of youth work back in our local authority. Sarah?
Okay, hi. So it's a pleasure to see you all here today. So I'm Sarah Wilton, and I'm the social care manager for the Chesil locality, covering Weymouth and Portland. So Dorset, for those that don't know, is a county in the southwest of England. Social care part of the locality covers children in care, child protection, and children in need. I'm also the operational lead for child exploitation in Dorset. So a bit about me: I qualified as a social worker years ago, 1994. After an early background in residential childcare, I've undertaken specialist postgraduate training since this time. Most recently, I've been undertaking a master's programme in advanced child protection. I've worked in various local authorities across the country, which is a privilege as it's allowed me to see lots of different ways of working in different communities. I've been working in Dorset since 2019.
Can you all hear the?
Yeah, I was going to say that, 'cause it's quite loud, isn't it, with the windows open. So just a brief overview of what we're talking about today. So we are going to take you through what we've called our innovation journey. So it's grounded obviously in youth work and social care practices in terms of developing safeguarding capacity in our communities. So it's framed amongst contextual safeguarding principles, and we're hoping that today will give you a flavour of how we've tried to support around our young women in our communities. That's you. That's you.
Very organised,
Yeah.
So I would like to explain the locality model of working in Dorset, because it's quite different to that traditional sort of split between early help and social care and youth work. So it's the locality model of working in Dorset that enabled us to develop the Chesil Hidden Girls project. Yeah. The headline of this for Dorset is that together we'll make Dorset the best place to be a child, where communities thrive and families are supported to be the best they can be. Dorset Thrive is Dorset Council's model for delivering children's services in Dorset. Our model brings together many services and support for children and families into 6 integrated locality teams across Dorset, supported by a central team of specialist services. The locality team brings together colleagues from early help, which includes the targeted youth workers, children's social care, educational psychology, SEND, which is special educational needs, and the inclusion services, so for young people that are out of education. And the locality model enables us to have really close working together across children's services to ensure the child and family receive the right service for their needs. So, for example, Rachel and I work in the same office, which is really, I think, unusual to get the targeted youth workers and social work teams working that closely together. We often sit opposite each other, so we have those really free-flowing conversations about the children in our community and the young people we're really worried about. And so it promotes communication, one team approach to families we work with. It gives a holistic overview of the needs. And we're always able to consider what's the best service for that child, what's the child need, what's the family need, who's got the best relationship with the child. It may not always be the social worker or the targeted youth worker might be working for a long time. So actually then you can go along and actually join together, or say to Rachel or one of the other targeted youth workers, do you want to come out with me on this visit to see this young person? You know them better. Come out and talk to them with me so I can build that relationship as well. So we work together during the extra periods of extra support. We have regular meetings together as a service to discuss the families again. Do we step them up? Can't return, step up social care, step down, step across, whatever. Who's right? Obviously within the statutory limitations we have with that. So social workers are able to draw on the targeted youth workers' expertise and knowledge of the peer groups and locations across the locality, which is really valuable because, you know, we get these police reports in saying, well, your young person was on the marsh, which is one of our hot spots, isn't it? And a lot of social workers, oh, where's the marsh? You know, and from the expertise we've got within the office, they now know these locations. They know where the young people are. They know what's happening in these places, and they can relate that to the young people because of that. It all feeds into the contextual safeguarding that takes place. So we undertake joint visits. The targeted youth workers with their overarching knowledge and insight into the group really help us focus on all the risks surrounding a child. When we've had young people being really worried about frequently missing, exploitation or other sadness and worries in their lives, the youth workers have been able to look out for more detached works when they go out into the communities. In the evenings, they check in with them and they're really part of that team around the child. It doesn't matter if they're not allocated to them. They're actually still forming those relationships. So we could say, oh,
Sorry, can you speak up just a little bit, please?
Sorry, speak up a bit.
Speak up a little
Yeah,
bit, please.
sure. So even if the targeted youth worker may not be allocated to a young person, but they're forming those relationships. And it's easy just to say, Rach, we know that someone's like they've been missing, you know, or we haven't seen them. Can you have a look and see if you see them when they're out tonight? Just check in with them. Let us know if they're okay. Dorset child is our child. It doesn't matter if you're a social worker, youth worker, education psychologist, everyone will wrap around support. Positively, in Dorset Council, this approach starts at the top down. The corporate directors, for example, across different areas of the council, have all been involved in pledges to care leavers. So, you know, what can you do if you're a director of place or a director of
Highways.
Highways, yeah. What can you do to support care leavers? And as part of Chesil Hidden Girls, actually, we got the opportunity to talk to them and ask them the same. What can you do to be part of actually working with our young people? What's your role as a community guardian? Because actually you're an employee of Dorset Council, therefore these young people are your responsibility as well, no matter what field you're working in. Modern broadens the reach of partnership working as well. So from the multidisciplinary working, the links with our different partner agencies are wider and good relationships are formed. There's local alliance groups, which include community members, and we help build the strengths within the locality. So, you know, traditionally social workers might work with quite a narrow group, and then you've got targeted youth workers who have like these wide links in the community. But because we're together in the same locality, the same office, working together, we're actually building that network a lot wider for all of us, which is great. Go on to you, Rachel, to tell you a bit more about the area.
We're having a bit of a mare with the house, like, aren't we? There we go. So I think it's important for you to know a little bit about where Chesil Hidden Girls has come from in terms of our area. So Weymouth and Portland. So some of you may know where it is, some of you may not. So it's Weymouth and Portland. It's a diverse population. It covers coastal areas, and then you've got Weymouth as its large town. The area is a popular tourist resort because we've got a thing called the Jurassic Coast. And so where we have probably around 70,000 people living there, in the tourist season, we can get up to 1 million visitors from across the world. Our transient population comes, I guess, with pros and cons for our young women, especially. On the part, it brings our locality really to life. However, it can create challenges. We sort of say in our locality that actually, April to September, things change drastically. Like completely. It's like two different localities.
You can't drive anywhere.
Yeah, so we get kind of, because of that coastal seaside resort, we do get the seasonal only employment for our local people. We get some of those holiday romances that may not always be consensual or healthy. And we also get that occasional, you're not welcome here, from our local young people when visitors come in. So there's quite a lot of complexity in our quite small locality. For a young person growing up in Weymouth and Portland, it can also really feel bleak at some times. So the open spaces that are filled with absolute beauty when the sun is shining and there's lots of outdoor activities, in the winter months, it's really quite sad and dark and depressing and boring in that respect. So resources, as probably everywhere, have decreased over time. There's so many less indoor spaces for young people to spend time with their peers outside of homes or schools. So I live in Weymouth and I grew up in Weymouth. So I'm working with young people today that are replicating my own experiences. And I look at it as actually, although I was a young person 20 plus years ago, where we've sort of changed in our technology and our society, actually the things that are accessible for our young people haven't really changed at all. It's the same pattern, and obviously now the same clothing, because they're all wearing the clothes I now wish I'd kept when I was 15 and I threw away. So obviously what we know in Dorset and in lots of other places, our young people now are choosing to spend much more time outside, away from their families, aren't they? So for us in Weymouth and Portland, that can mean a beach, it can mean a pier, it can mean a quarry, it can mean a wooded area, as well as like our traditional McDonald's or sort of transport hubs, and our common one in Weymouth and Portland is the use of abandoned buildings, which always amazes me how young people can access and how they get in, and panics me as well. So we have this kind of space where we've got this extreme beauty, but it stands side by side with high levels of deprivation and often low aspirations. But to counterbalance this, we also have this sort of intergenerational sense of community amongst our community. And there's a fight, I think, that goes along with that, in terms of we have a real fight within our community to say, actually, no, this is our space and we want to make things better for our young people, our children, our families. So Chesil Hidden Girls is a sort of project to build on that power of community that we've sort of seen and addressed over the years. So Sarah and I both watched a documentary called BBC Hidden Girls. So thus our name, Chesil Hidden Girls, is a sort of a note to that. And we called it our light bulb moment, I guess, as it was at this time we recognised that some of the things that we were seeing in our own locality for our young women were moving towards what was represented on screen in this documentary. So we'd already been reflecting on our young women who we knew about their peer groups, where they were spending time, and we'd started to see this sort of emerging gang type culture within the Chesil locality, on a very low level gang type culture. I do that in kind of inverted. But there was one particular detached youth work session. It was in the winter. So they're obviously in the multi-storey car park, because that's the space where it's sheltered from the rain. And we'd come across a group of young men that I knew really well, and we were worried about them. They were involved in criminal activity. We were working with them to try and reduce their levels of exploitation. And amongst this group of young men was a group of young women. Some of them, were girlfriends of the men, and other ones were just peers. And on this occasion, as I went to approach the young women to say hello, because I worked with them, I knew them, seen them in lots of other contexts, I was physically shielded from being able to speak to them by some of the young men. So at that point in time, they were completely hidden and voiceless. They weren't allowed to speak to me or engage with me whatsoever on that particular occasion. So we sort of, go back to the office, have this chat with Sarah going, crikey, what's this about? And so we reflected on it, and then we started thinking about all these other incidences of young women that we were really worried about. And then obviously, as this quote suggests, we started wondering whether some of our young girls and their experiences and their traumas are in fact hidden from what we've been seeing in our ongoing service. Over to you.
So why are young women hidden? So we know that women and girls face risks on the streets, in their own homes, from violence and sexual assault. We also know that a lot of crimes are not reported. On the streets and in the community, girls can be undetected, not seen or believed. Young women and girls tend to be viewed as willing participants and judged according to sexist social norms and stereotypes. Their behaviour interpreted in different ways. There are huge challenges in the culture facing girls and young women. How they're described and blamed. And we see that from professionals as well, not just within the community. How could a girl be held responsible for being raped just because she walked down a dark street, or wore an outfit she felt comfortable in? Why should a girl be told she should make allowances for a violent and abusive partner? Girls present in different ways to boys. It's a generalisation, but it's based on what we know and see, as well as cultural expectations and how society places gender expectations on females to behave in a certain way and criticise and blame for acting, dressing in ways they choose as an expression of their identity, which is their right. Girls can be quieter. They may present their troubles in headaches or self-harming behaviours, eating disorders, self-neglects. We know that boys have those problems as well, but actually we know that it is higher in girls. Boys do present as louder. We call them our noisy boys. They're more visible. They're more likely to be involved in ASB type behaviours or presenting at your hospital, A&E departments with more visible signs of a fight or a knife wound, as opposed to the girls where you see like the presenting with tummy aches, headaches, and mental health problems. The invisibility is attractive to exploiters. Girls can go undetected, so their role in gangs can be different to that of the boys. They may carry items to the boys, be used, traded, and sexually assaulted. As they're less likely to be detected by the police, they can also be used by the more organised criminal gangs to actually travel distances to carry drugs, county lines. We also see the use of coercive control, sometimes referred to as the boyfriend model, which can trap girls, reinforced by the social norms they've grown up with or their own life experiences and adverse childhood experiences, increasing their vulnerability. The boy, male or groom, acts as a boyfriend when using emotional abuse as a method of control and or violence. So these girls are hidden. The extent of their exploitation is not known. Sexual assault and street harassment is treated as acceptable and normal. Some may even go as far to say as they should feel flattered by the unwanted and scary oppressive attention they receive by walking down the street. Like, hey, he called out the car window to you. Is that great? It's like, no, I'm a schoolgirl. I was scared. That's what we've heard some of the young people say. It's not okay. But it's starting at the bottom, isn't it, to really challenge what people think is acceptable and okay. So obviously we've got a few stats up here. So it's quite shocking, isn't it, really? The Metropolitan Police record only 4 gang-associated women on their gang matrix, representing just 0.2% of the total cohort for men and boys. And that can't be true. Get it? We know the small girls. And actually, what the Children's Commission told us, it's 2019, but actually, I think it's still about the same. Figures suggest actually 34% of children involved in gangs are girls. So where are they? Why are we not seeing them? Youth workers reporting it's far harder to spot the signs of girls in gangs. Sexual exploitation for girls is invisible or presents a hospital of mental trauma. The relative invisibility of young women. And the gang associated young women are just at risk of offending something domestic abuse, sexual violence. Yeah, louder. So just really to sort of go back on what Rachel was saying about the area as well. So Weymouth and Portland, it's a coastal town, and also being part of Dorset, it's rural as well. There's really poor transport links once you get outside of Weymouth and Portland to link you to other areas of Dorset. Although we have got the train line, obviously, which is Weymouth being the end of the train line. You try and get over to Portland from Weymouth, and it can take ages to wait for a bus or long walk over there, and cabs are incredibly expensive. We know that from this research that was done on rural English coastal towns, we know that there's very different and specific issues facing young people growing up there because of the poverty, deprivation. There's low employment. We know that, again, with the transient population coming in and out, there's holiday jobs, there's seasonal work, there's part-time work. So it's really lowering all those life chances and opportunities for all of our young people. But with the girls as well, what they see as their future, what are these other vulnerabilities having on their parents, their families, their carers, so inside sort of like their own world, that actually then influences them in that wider system when they're outside, increases their vulnerability to exploitation.
Shall I go to the next one?
Yes, please.
Oh, there's our train station.
Our train station. So the end of the line, an awful lot goes on in front of that train station, as you can
And
imagine.
that's probably a picture taken about 20 years ago, and it's not changed.
It's not with those cars. I've got it off Google, actually. It's first. I don't know where it's come from. Yeah, so we you know, again, it's like high use of stick, heroin, morphine, deaths, poor housing. You try as a family to get a decent rental property in Weymouth, Portland. It's almost impossible because of all the Airbnbs now, second homes, and they're left in cramped, impoverished conditions. We've got lots of hostels, lots of hotels that are really run down but offer bed and breakfast accommodation to families that unfortunately have been made homeless. And all this is then pushing our young people out onto the streets and making them feel quite despondent. What else is there for me? So actually it's quite attractive also, isn't it, to the exploiters, people that come down the train lines and are looking.
I was going to say, can I butt in? Sorry. Because Weymouth in Portland, Weymouth is an importer of county line. So we often get young people that have been trafficked down towards us, or adults and young people that end up down here. But what we found is a slight pattern as well. So then when we have these people that have maybe come down into our town, and maybe some of the adult males have come down and then have linked up with some of our young women, and then we've seen this pattern with young women then potentially going up to London and then kind of ending up in kind of quite dangerous and exploitative situations. And I think I think it just goes hand in hand with that lack of aspiration that we have here, that lack of excitement almost, that because we're not urban, we're not massively, like say Weymouth is our large town, it's not an urbanized town whatsoever. So I think the thrill of bright lights and big cities can really kind of be a real incentive for young people, young women in particular, to kind of say yes to things which they don't realise what they're saying yes to, if that makes sense.
And that's where the coercive control and the boyfriend model comes in again with some of these males that come down. And it's not just going up into some of the cities like London. It's very easy to access Southampton and Bournemouth all along that main train line. And we know that they can quite easily jump the trains. They don't get challenged on the trains. No one's asking them what they're doing on there late at night and why they haven't got a ticket.
We have about 15 minutes left because we have to finish at 12.
Yeah.
We're meeting from 12.
Okay.
So maybe 5 more minutes, then we take 10
Oh,
minutes.
crikey. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll spin through.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So just obviously, we've told you why it's a gender project. So just go
Yeah,
across to.
So I'll skip on. So I guess
Next slide.
one of the things that we skipped telling you is that when we first had this conversation, me and Sarah had pretty much a flippant conversation when we were talking about this problem that we had recognised amongst our young women. And we were really frustrated. There was one young woman in particular, and she totally disengaged from talking to her social worker. She wasn't engaged in education. She wasn't talking to youth workers. She wasn't talking to anyone, child in care. And then one of us, I don't know who it was, went, "We need a nail bar." And we were like, "What?" And then we kind of like paused and went, "Actually, this could work. What if we had a space that from the outside looks absolutely normal, but on the inside, we've got an intervention tool where we can say, oh, come and work with us." So obviously we work for a local authority. So we thought, we're never going to get a yes if we say, can we have a nail bar or can we do some work like this? But we threw it out to our senior leaders and they went, yeah, go for it. Present to us, what's your ideas type stuff. So originally Chesel Hidden Girls had these 4, I'm pointing at the screen, it's there, these 4 ideas. So our targeted or hidden space, that's what we really wanted. That was our first idea, our nail bar. So actually, if we have got young women that are being exploited or in controlling coercive situations, to their controller or exploiter, they're going to their beauty appointment. But actually, when they get in there, they've got access to a social worker, a youth worker, a police officer, whoever, the domestic abuse worker, anyone they want to do. So that's still our ultimate gain. We haven't quite got there yet, because what we've also recognised is that is very specialist. And before that, we need to focus on some of those other things. So things like safe routes. So let's go and map out the areas that young women feel safe. And we've done that. We've mapped that out. We've worked with our community safety colleagues and our police colleagues, and we've changed things, you know, increasing CCTV, increasing awareness, increasing where the police do their patrols, doing better lighting, listening to what those young women are saying about the spaces that they choose to walk home and what that feels like and how we can create that wraparound support so it feels safer for them. We've also started this idea of these emergency travel tokens, because we saw this pattern of young women kind of both sneaking out at night, but then ending up in places where they were either they couldn't go home because they snuck out and they didn't want to phone a parent and say, come and help me, I'm stuck, but also where they potentially had gone somewhere and they felt like they couldn't leave because they were meant to be staying somewhere. So we've started this process of coming up with this idea of prepaid tokens for taxis or buses, where actually a young woman can phone up and say, can I organise this and can I use this and I want to get home type thing. But obviously the main thing that we've really focused on is this community guardianship stuff, and that's kind of where we have developed these approaches to create safety using our non-traditional partners. Should I skip through the survey bit if we haven't got time?
Let's go into the Pineapple, what the Pineapple Project is.
Yeah, so obviously within this we've done lots of surveys. We've done a big survey. We had quite a lot of responses. I feel like you kind of need to say it to understand it. And we started hearing things. These are some of the things that we're hearing from young women. And it made us think, these were all comments said on detached sessions, on street corners, you know, just with simple questions, you know, first disclosures of harm. And it was like, actually, we need to do something with this. So roll on the Pineapple Project. Oh, is that me again?
Yeah,
Still talking. Sorry, typical youth worker. Typical youth worker. So our the Pineapple Project is our outward-facing name for Chesel Hidden Girls. Everyone always says, where's the name Pineapple Project come from? Obviously, it was chosen by young women. So we'd pulled a focus group together to talk about this whole feeling. How can we make you feel safer? How can we increase safety in our community? At the start of any session, I'm sure like lots of you have done, you set some ground rules with your young people and you go, we need a safe word because some of this stuff might be sensitive. And one of them went pineapple. I was like, yeah, take that, pineapple, safe word. If anyone says pineapple throughout the day, we'll stop, we'll pause, whatever. 8 hours later, we're camping in a bell tent in April. It was freezing. And we were like, oh, we can't have Chesel Hidden Girls as the name we go out selling to communities. What does that mean? So that's our corporate name. And I was like, we need an outward facing name. And one of the girls just said, well, if pineapple's our safe word, why can't that be our project? And from that's where the name comes. And we like it in Weymouth and Portland in particular, it fits in because it's kind of tropically. We've got lots of bars and shops in our seaside coastal town type stuff. So let you explain what the Pineapple Project is.
And so in the Pineapple Project, what we've done basically is try to create safe spaces for young women and girls. So this is one part of Chesel Hidden Girls. So to do that, and I'll try and whiz through this because obviously we know we're nodding it as we talk too much clearly. So we've recruited community guardians. Community guardians obviously a feature of contextual safeguarding. We've gone out initially to local businesses and we're looking for sort of like community members as well for community guardians. We've looked at hotels, fast food outlets. We've actually got New Look that will be familiar to some of you as a safe place for community guardians, taxi drivers, hotels, hairdressers, park wardens. We're asking the community guardians to be bystanders, to be the eyes and ears of the local area, to challenge, observe, to protect our young women if and when they need it. So in getting the community garden, what we haven't done is just said like, okay, New Look Shop is now a safe space and please be a community guardian. What we've put is a whole load of systems, policies and procedures behind that. We've done extensive training. We've created a toolkit. So they've got step-by-step steps on what to do if a young girl comes into the shop and this has happened, that's happened. They've also had training from the police, one of our partners, because for this project we partner with the police, sexual health, the local college, real multidisciplinary team. They're all DBS checked, obviously, as well. And actually, the person in the premises, like the person in New Look, who's a community guardian, that's a safe person within the premises. We're not saying that everyone in there is safe. Police have done like intel checks on the business as well, to like that they know that there's anything around that business, then actually we wouldn't be directing our young people there. So it's taken a long time, a lot of steps we probably didn't anticipate to set this up, but what we have as a result is the number of community guardians and shops and business across Weymouth. We're expanding onto Portland as well now, and we publicise that to the young people through various different methods. That actually, if you feel worried, if you feel unsafe, that could be because someone's following you, you've seen someone that's bullying you at school, or it could be because you've been sexually assaulted. This is where you can go. This is the opening hours for it.
So what we've done with some of our community guardians, we've trained them up in some of the bystander intervention training. So the stuff that the UK government's using along the Enough campaign with the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. So we're trying to kind of use that as the premise to say, actually, what you might be seeing versus. So we're not saying that we're a place where a young woman has to. We don't want it to be that a young woman has to go in and say, pineapple, I need help type stuff. We're trying to flip it round. So actually, we increase the awareness in our community guardians so they start seeing things through a safeguarding perspective as opposed to necessarily sort of waiting to be told that something's happened.
Yeah.
So we are doing that, what you think you might be seeing, what you could be missing type stuff, and actually just being a bit more curious. So within the toolkit that we've created, we've done that real step by step, actually, because we're saying to people that work in retail businesses or food outlets or hotels, you know, they're not safeguarders. They don't do safeguarding in their day job. So we've tried to almost do that kind of step by step. These are things that you could do. These are things that you could say. And then we as a local authority, in partnership obviously with the police as well, have wrapped around them to give them those structures of actually, if something then suddenly feels really like out of your comfort zone and you don't know what you're doing, we will come and support. But actually what we're trying to do is empower the community to kind of go, well, this is what's happened, this is the reason she's come in, we can help in this moment. And it might just be a case that they help in that moment, they signpost, the young woman says, that's brilliant, thank you very much, or the young woman says, well, where else can I get support? And the young woman is in charge of that, her own destiny, because that's one of our very important things that we've recognised. We know through the work that we've done before, things can get taken out of a young woman's control if things have been heard or disclosed, and then suddenly she feels powerless. So we are giving that onus back to the young women to say, if something's happened, you need help, you need support, you're in charge of it. But there's people here wider than just social workers, youth workers, teachers, that are willing to be that person that will listen.
And the aim is to roll it out across Dorset.
Yeah.
Fit in with the aims of Dorset being a safe county and a safe place for young people. If we go to the last slide and then
Yeah, sorry,
we
started a bit late.
We just talked so much.
So this is our standpoint. At present, we may only understand the extent from a historical point of view, and that's what we're intending to change. Sorry for the rush at the end. Oh, was the lady first?
The lady was first.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. Really interesting. So many so I might grab the details after.
Yeah, I'll put it up.
I've got loads of questions, but one question that's been burning in my mind: how to get them to find out how do they know where those safe spaces are?
Yeah.
People, how do they know pineapple is a safe word? I understand you've worked with a small cohort of young people to get out of concept. What are your plans to
advertise it?
Advertise it with women girls in a way that those who are perpetrators don't take advantage of it.
So that's where at the minute we're using an Instagram page, which we only we tell young women directly. So we've been into school assemblies and like single gender ones, and we've done some of that. And it's a very difficult, it's a really complicated thing to try and do with our comms team as well, because they're like saying it's got to be an open page. Like, I don't want it as an open page, I want it as a closed page. So we're trying to make it one of those if you know type things. But it's that fine line between obviously advertising it as look at what we're doing as a local authority compared to what you're saying.
There's also
Yeah.
those, I think, are really subtle and interesting ways that you target particular groups.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea.
But so we've got two of the strands as well. So obviously we've got the safe places that they're on Instagram, and we've got posters put up in some of the like local public toilets and other places that have got like a QR code you could scan, find out where your nearest place is open. But also the nail bar, which we will be moving on to do, will be sort of by appointment. And we've been thinking about ways that actually we'd have like a little logo on the website and people click that to make their appointment. So the girl will click it, make their appointment, and then the nail bar, which actually is a real beauty salon, but actually they were offered us their downstairs room, will know that that's booking for the Pineapple Project. But males wouldn't know about that. And we were thinking about, how do we target it by, having a separate code that we hand out to girls that where we know or we worry or we suspect that there might be a problem.
Say about things like using discount codes for things like that. But also, I think one of the other things is, sorry, just to before the questions, that obviously we want to raise that community awareness because we want to spark a kind of a cultural change in our community. We want to kind of make that big, like, actually, this isn't okay. Street harassment isn't okay. So let's challenge it. So there's an element of the Pineapple Project where we kind of want it to be known in terms of we want the community to know this is what we're doing and this is what the presenting problem is. But then as it gets kind of more towards the higher, more significant end, we need to kind of think a bit more kind of, as you can imagine, it's a very new concept for a local authority to be doing something like this. So every day is a learning day and every day comes up with a different branch of, oh, right, we need to do that as well, type stuff.
No, he was. Then
Okay, first of all, completely stimulating presentation.
Oh, thank
And
you.
I just want to first start by extolling the good work that you do, because it's really, really amazing that you're making change in your own way, which is really great to hear. I'm Najee, Commonwealth Youth Council. I work a lot with policy and advocacy, and my question is kind of from that standpoint. Because I believe when we work with young people, how we go about approaching both our intervention as well as their development is really important. The how. In a lot of volatile and rural spaces, the default approach is to view young people as vandals, young people as vagrants, almost who need saving, and that the state has to intervene, and without it, they're going to go down this wrong path. And I know you mentioned in Dorset that there are high rates of teenage pregnancy and substance abuse and poor prospects for young people. And this kind of approach, well, we view young people as these maladies and these problems in society. I think it's a really damaging approach to how we deal with young people, as opposed to what you are doing, which is to give the talk back to you to say that we are here to support you and we are here to help you. And so, especially when I'm working with a lot of these policies, I just wanted to ask you how you go about resisting that kind of approach to going about youth development, to say that we are here for you, but we don't view you as the problem, but we view you as a part of the solution. How, especially in a community that is as volatile and rural as the Dorset and the other name right now, but those type of spaces, how do you go about thinking that you're not a problem, although you may be a part of a wider systemic challenge, but you're a part of the solution? I know that's a heavy question.
Yeah.
So, I suppose it's about building relationships, isn't it? Relationship-based practice, and that with your targeted attached youth work is really at the heart of that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because obviously we saw this as a presenting problem in terms of young women, specifically gender projects, but obviously we also are interested in all young people's safety. But we knew, because of the way that our community responds to young people, the amount of like front page news in our local Echo about yobs on scooters. I'm like, crikey, is that like the top story you can get in Weymouth and Portland? Yobs on scooters went into a shop type thing. It's kind of, we knew that we'd have that challenge to say how, like, if we went out and said, actually, community, how can we kind of, how are you going to help us keep young people safe? Because we can't do it on our own. We've thought, well, we're just going to get ASB, they're a problem. So we went down, you know, with this route as well, we went down the sort of emotive route almost, isn't it? You know, about safety about young women, that kind of stuff. But we
Going out to the hotels, talking to them.
Yeah,
to change their perceptions.
It is quite entrenched views around young people, and there's still quite a political hit around the lack of youth services. There's still lots of people that will bear a grudge around that, and then don't feel they can buy into maybe other services that are trying to, you know, bring it back. I've not really answered the question, have I? But
No, I completely, I get what you're saying.
yeah.
I think that you maybe missed Rachel. I think you and I met online. I'm June from North Lanarkshire.
Ah, yes. Hello.
Yeah. Nice to see you. I think to add to your question and your response, if you don't mind.
No, go.
Sharing that because we kind of crossed.
Yeah.
Paths, is that what I have found in getting involved in some of this work, which has been clearly led by you guys, is the change in the use of language and how young people are described. And for example, we find young women under the age of 16 may be described in reports as being sexually active. We shouldn't be describing young people under the age of 16 as sexually active. They have been abused. They have been exploited. So the change in language with our partners in police and with teachers and with the community leads to that looking at through a different lens. It's about how our young people are being exploited, but how we as adults in the profession describe them is the catalyst of change and for improvement. So that's key.
Yeah, we've recognised that. We had a slide about that, how we were sort of saying that, you know, there are people within our own locality, well, partners, so education, police, etc., that should know better about the way they use their language. And we've got some examples which, you've got a police officer saying she should have said no. And it is like, and so there's a long way to go, in terms of that. Sorry.
You had a question?
Yeah, I think I was just having worked a bit in projects, not as fabulous as this, I have to say, but as awareness. I think the tension always is about that visibility and invisibility. So the nail bar, the barber shop, whatever that community space is for. But then it's that other side, and really what this is trying to address is gang problem, is exploitation, is violence, is drugs, is it's serious, it's kind of a real serious grip on a community. And if all of a sudden there becomes a bit, people are really tuned in communities, but they all of a sudden go, oh, that pineapple project, she's been getting there and I've noticed that when she comes out, such and such is happening. Yeah. And how do you protect yourself then from that? And that is a real challenge. And it was interesting exactly what you were saying about how you then use local businesses and then the intelligence that the police have got, how those businesses are set up and what their ethical and moral background is. And I don't know the solution to that, but I do know that that's something that you'll probably have to think about.
We don't know the answer. No, we are working very closely with the police around that kind of the daily changes in terms of intel and stuff like that. So
sorry, some of us have to leave.
Yeah, of course.
But please continue the conversation, and we have another meeting.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The lady had a question as well. She's been.
So in terms of the
yes.
Well, I have a couple of questions. One, you spoke about the fact that young women aren't necessarily being recorded when it comes to when it comes to gang activities. Could it be in the sense of behavioral type that sometimes men or police officers may not necessarily think that women would be a part of that in a certain type of way, but they may connect with them, see them like probably like a sister or a daughter, like they cannot ascribe those attributes to them and may not necessarily offhand think that, oh, this person is a part of this in some type of way. Also in terms of the salon or the nail place that you're going to set up, with training be provided to the male tech so that they could then also do that sort of like triage and see, oh, this person is at risk and
Yes.
potentially could be part of the project. And lastly, sorry, because you spoke about the exploitation of young women because of the influx of people due to like tourism and all of that. And being from the Caribbean, we also see that happen with young men a lot, where they are also exploited in that way, like sex tourism and all of that. Is that also a factor in your community as well?
You mean people coming specifically in the area to exploit the young people?
Yeah, so like we see older women coming in and they have a little honey for the weekend, so that's all.
I think what we haven't seen or what we don't know about is any organised groups coming in for that purpose, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And if you refer back and think about 3 girls in Rotherham, what was going so undetected and what wasn't believed. And if you look in every area, and it's part of youth work and social work, is that you have to think the unbelievable. You have to be curious. You have to have your hypothesis. What could be going on? Could that be taking place? It may well be. And that's where we've got to be open to all the possibilities and look out for the signs. And by listening to the girls, and of course, yeah, we mentioned males. Absolutely, there's other projects being set up separately for the males. We need to think, this is the worst that could happen. This could be happening. How would we know? What do we need to ask? What spaces do we get into? And that's where it comes back to one of the quotes further back there, that girls feel they're not asked the right question in the right spaces, and that's what we need to do.
It was interesting. Think of an example. It was January this year. We had a concern that was raised by a school that some young people had been going to a party there was lots of drugs and all this kind of stuff. But there was always a flippant moment when they said, "Oh yeah, there's a woman. It's a woman there. It's a woman there that's an Australian woman. She's holding these parties and there's blah blah blah." And it took us a lot longer to get intervention going, in terms of hang on, we need to be a bit we need to figure out what's going on here. We've got 4 bits of information, and the police were like, "Oh no, what's that about? That can't happen. Women don't exploit." And all this kind of stuff.
Like women don't
all things like that.
Do.
And actually, because when it all came out, we did find that there was a woman, there was lots of drugs, there was lots of money, and there was lots of and she was a registered sex offender. And because the boys were the victims, I'm switching a little bit away from our focus to our gendered project, but the boys were mainly the victims in this. It was seen differently, wasn't it? So flipping it back around the other way. So and we do and that was in a nice part of Weymouth and Portland, in an Airbnb area, a holiday cottage type vicinity, places that wouldn't be a hotspot, completely hidden. So we know that things just happen, and they happen. And the more we've learned about those things now, that was happening for 4 months. 4 months of activity was happening in that building. And when we found out about it, that was right at the end of it all. So, yeah, I'm trying to think your other question. The training, yes, the beauty salon, the workers in there will be heavily trained. They will be more trained than our community guardians for the Pineapple Project. And I think just to dispel some of that, we won't be using the Pineapple Project name alongside the beauty salon. It won't be that at all, because it will be hidden, and it is our major aspiration to get there, and we hope we do. We've almost got a building ourselves in the town centre to promote contextual safeguarding and / the Pineapple Project, to do some of that community awareness raising to our other adults, to try and raise the profile around that sort of bystander stuff. The gang stuff. Did you answer the gang thing? What's the other gang thing?
So just asking if there was sometimes if there would be a halo effect where people may not necessarily see women as being able to be a part of gangs or be involved in criminality in that way. So that's why sometimes it may not necessarily be recorded or considered.
Well, that's one of the first. Sorry, one of the first things that we saw that we've reflected on. So we get police reports in through the system. They go through our front door, our matching process, and a lot of them will be followed up with an allocation to a social worker or an early help worker. But then we saw, didn't we? We suddenly looked on some other young women records, and there'd been police reports about things like violence, like street level violence that young women had been involved in. They'd been the perpetrators, but there was no action. No action was taken because it was seen as like a scrap, or, you know, like, to use a swear word, like a little bitch fight, you know, just girls being girls. And actually, when you started reading into it a bit more, there was more to it, wasn't there? It was like,
Yeah, the girls were it was quite horrific, really, you know, the amount of trauma and injuries they were causing to other girls. But they were linked also with males, and almost like some vigilante stuff going on, where a girl had disclosed that they had been raped by a young male. So these other girls were then taking it upon themselves to go and beat them up, attack them, because they'd actually said this about a man, which was true, it had happened, but they were acting as protectors.
or they were beating up ex-girlfriends of the current boyfriend. Type thing.
Yeah, very much.
So it
Well,
was
you're
like,
going out
and they
the
were,
right
it
way,
was
yeah.
like, but yeah, a lot of it was
Yeah.
unfollowed up.
Yeah.
It was potentially reported, and there's records of it,
bias.
but it was never followed up. Yeah, massive
And
bias.
also we are starting to see girls carrying knives as well. And I mean, that may sound like, you know, some areas, well, God, this has been going on for ages. We know, you know, and in the cities and everything, obviously it takes a lot longer to filter down to Dorset and to rural areas. But we're starting to see it now. But in a recent event where there was a stabbing of a young male, there was a knife involved. What was kind of really hidden in that was actually there was two girls that they thought were carrying the knife, and the knife had actually come from you know, someone they knew. But that wasn't taken anywhere near seriously as the boys and the impact on these males in this group, and what we're going to do about them. And what are we going to do about these girls? You know, let's work with them.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. Hi. So you probably were not here. Actually, you were not here in the morning, but you might want to try and find a guy called Jason Allen.
Oh yeah, we saw.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing and what he's doing, not quite the same,
No,
but very, very similar, and the energy is the same. I mean, he's in inner city London, and you're in rural Dorset.
Yeah,
and we've got
the young
full-time jobs alongside
the young people, the young people's issues are very similar. But also, I live in Kent, so young people are sometimes moved away, not sometimes, a lot of the time moved away from inner city London into rural or coastal Kent because of the issues with gangs. So trying to remove the young people from those situations. But we're finding that, and we know this, that the gangs follow the young
absolutely
people
it doesn't work.
those areas.
Yeah.
So we then have this county lines issue going on.
yeah, we've seen that a lot. We've got a lot of out of county young people that have been placed in Weymouth and Portland, especially.
Yeah.
And then it's then it gets all like, it's like, where, you know, who are you? Like, how do we
It's
figure
a
out who you
battle,
are?
yeah, because they should be notified when they move into our area. And those risks, we should be aware of them, and they should have whatever the MACE process, child exploitation meeting, should happen within our area in the same way it would do with traditional child protection. So we know what the risks are, but often we find out when we look at the peer groups and the new names popped up, and then we find out, oh, okay, that's a child from London or from Kent or any of the areas. And we see when our young people go missing and they start travelling to these areas back with them and start linking in with their friendships and their peer groups in the areas they've come from. So it doesn't, moving people out of the area does not keep them any safer at all. It's best to keep them close, keep them in the home county, unless in extreme cases, obviously there's always differences, and there's always variables.
Where would you like to?
No, you go.
Where would you like to see your project in 5 years' time? What's the strategy?
So obviously we've started with the Pineapple Project and that community guardian stuff that we've, and the non-traditional, you know, getting the buy-in from the new businesses, the other businesses and stuff, that's started in Weymouth and Portland. So the natural step is obviously to expand it to all of our localities in Dorset, so 6 localities. And then we want to be able to share how we as a local authority have done it to other local authorities, because our director of children's services is like, well, we want to show that we're a safe county. This is what we're doing. This is what we're saying about our young women. By default, then try and expand this, and how do we do the same for all young people.
Yeah, we'd like it to be a model that actually is expanded across other areas. So other local authorities have, you know, come to us already when they've seen bits and pieces. Oh, what is that?
what we can do.
How have you done it?
Yeah, so we've spoken to them and told them, obviously, but what we'd like to do is when we've got everything set up is to be able to say, here's our model, here's our learning, go for it, do it, you know, especially in our neighbouring local authorities as well. Like we're next to Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, and our young people travel. There's so much cross-border stuff. We would like them to have the same project running there as well. So it's safe for all the young people wherever they are.
We're lucky with obviously one of the businesses we've got on board is New Look. So it's a, you know, it's a well-known brand, but New Look it's a fun fact. New Look began in Weymouth. That's where it started. So it was it was a very good way to say, come on, you started in Weymouth, you know, your corporate social responsibility, suddenly youth worker turning PR worker. I was like, here we go. Like, you know, come on, let's get you on board. But so we've got some, you know, if we can kind of help the country, you know, kind of see how it's done, that would be an aim, but it's a massive aim, that, isn't it? Lady, yeah.
I think
Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. Just really quickly, how would the nail bar beauty salon be funded? I'm just absolutely fascinated by that. Like, would that be local authority?
So when we've had funding before, we've had stuff from our innovation fund in our own in-house.
Okay.
And then we also got some money from our community safety partnership and Dorset Police. So I think we would put the shout out to the sort of the partnership, the safeguarding partnership, really, and kind of say, come on then, give us some money.
And there is funding. People have pockets of money for projects like this because it's the Violence Against Women and Girls initiative. So actually the police have money that they're willing to put into it. The local authorities have money, but it really hasn't cost very much so far because we work for the local authority anyway. So we're kind of trying to do it alongside with everything else.
Yeah, the main cost has been our time. That's realistically.
And everyone else that's helped us. We go out on event nights as well. So when we have like the fireworks nights, things like that, we do like little pop-up safe spaces because the girls and young women said, we don't feel safe on these nights. So we've gone out there and said, okay, we're going to come out. We'll talk to you on these nights. We'll be here for you. And it's amazing the people that have just said, yeah, we'll come out with you, corporate directors, a lot. Yeah, we'll come out on one of these nights. We'll come out and walk beside the young women in our area, which is great. It's a lot of goodwill, isn't it? A lot of voluntary.
Sorry, the lady up there was first.
That's for you, but I was wondering how the women the young girls are affected by it, because even as they grow, I know we want more youth engagement and activism, but even in spaces where we want them to be in, they're not always safe. So I wonder how they feel about this, how they grow, how they get empowered, that even in the highest spaces of authority that is supposed to protect them, things could happen to them personally, and how you basically train them for life as a young woman and eventually as a woman everywhere you go.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when we sort of promoted this on a wider locality level to all our young women, there was quite a lot of rage from a lot of our young women and saying, finally, someone's understanding what we experience, you know, because we're using examples of what small groups of pockets of groups have told us. And I think they like, I think we're quite fortunate in our area. They like the fact that we care in terms, and I think they're advocating that. I'm kind of missing your question, aren't I? But what was it? Just say what you asked again.
How have they reacted so far with your answer?
Yeah, so
you're planning on building that in them so they know that, you know, everywhere they go, there could be issues where women.
Yeah. So one of the things that we recognised from doing this as a community guardianship model was that, which is why we've asked for a provision, because what we've noticed is that as much as the safe spaces, like the businesses, they're there for if and when something's happened, aren't they? But actually, how do we increase that? Where's the space where we can just have those conversations with young women about these are the things that are not okay. This is where you can get general support. You know, do you want a cup of tea? You know, type stuff. So that's why we're sort of moving into that model, because they're saying actually we want more space where we can just have that single gender work done. So which I've always advocated it for years as a youth worker. Single gender work I love doing, and I think it works really well because people are confident in those spaces to talk more openly. So that's kind of what we do, and it is unfortunately we're not going to fix the issue against violence against women and girls, are we? So yeah, it is about preparing, but it's if we can then create actually some of that bystander, that active bystander, this is not okay, I'm not going to accept it, you know, as they become into, you know, young adults have their own children, it can just be that message that's imparted.
Yeah. That starfish story, isn't it, where you've got the little boy or girl walking on the beach and throwing the starfish back in the water, and the man says, what are you doing? You'll never clear all these starfish. It's, yeah, but that'll make a difference.
Yeah.
That one.
Thank you.
Thank you.